the people of India were one of the first people to make the deduction between, hygiene and disease, the absence of hygiene and how that leads to disease. They were one of the first people to deduce that. And that's because they had the concept of shocha. Shocha, which is a very broad term, which includes external hygiene as well as internal purity. So we had this concept of shocha. So it meant like bathing, washing hands and feet, all these terms, and it included sexual hygiene as well. That's another amazing thing, and they totally understood the concept of isolating the disease-causing um, things in our life, disease-causing excreta and other substances, isolating them from contact. That was very well understood. And under no circumstances were human waste or blood or hazardous substances were to be allowed to contaminate water sources. So this was all there. And so you were asking me for evidence. There's plenty of evidence that this kind of awareness existed in ancient India. Because to just give you a few examples, if we look at our ancient texts, then we have Charaka Samhita. Charaka Samhita, which according to some scholars can be dated to 4th century before the Common Era, but actually Indic scholars think it's much older. It might be as old as 5,000 years old, Mm-hmm. And Charaka Samhita speaks about various kinds of water pollution, how it leads to doshas in the water, how you should avoid drinking water which is contaminated. So you see, it has the connection between lack of cleanliness and the causation of disease. Then Sushruta Samhita, that also shows a clear knowledge about how drinking polluted water can cause various diseases. In fact, both these Samhitas, they also make reference to a certain invisible organisms which might be present in the blood or mucus or phlegm that could be causing disease. So perhaps they were talking about viruses and bacteria.
Right.
And I want to tell you about Mahabharata. In Mahabharata, there are clear references to, how you have to preserve the sanctity of water. So there is the scene when Arjuna makes a vow to destroy Jayadratha. When Jayadratha kills his son Abhimanyu, then he's in a rage and he wants to destroy him. And then he makes this vow that if I do not kill Jayadratha by the end of the day, let me go to the same hell that people go to when they release phlegm or urine or excreta into water. So he said that shows you how much awareness is there. Then there is the Arthashastra, which talks about severe punishments for those who pollute water sources. And then there are many other texts like Vastu Shastra, Vayu Purana, Kama Sutra. There's so much evidence of the knowledge of hygiene and sanitation. So I wish that these texts could have been used to extract global practices, global best practices, which is needed for a healthy ecosystem, various healthy ecosystems in our planet. We could have used all these texts to make those code of practices.
That's very interesting, Sahana ji. Now, please tell me, if we knew so much about sanitation and health and hygiene, why did we and why do we still have open defecation?
Actually, Sharon, I just wanted to tell you a little bit more about what's in our text. Can I go on a little bit more?
Sure, please do, please do.
Yeah. No, I wanted to tell you about manusmithi. Manusmithi is a very reviled text and we associate it with all negative things about Hinduism. But manusmithi has devoted so many verses to disallow the pollution of rivers, water bodies, plowed lands, even the holes inhabited by creatures, even how to keep that clean. That has been mentioned in Manusmriti. And the most amazing thing is that the Manusmriti specifically lists 10 impure substances that are produced by the human bodies. Okay, oily exudations, semen, blood, urine, mucus, feces, earwax, phlegm, tears, sweat. So you see, can you imagine the kind of systematic thinking that has gone into this analysis? And we are talking about a very ancient period in history. And it's indicating that if you touch earwax or excreta, any of these things, then you have to immediately go and wash your hands. You can't use the same hands to clean to have your food. So it's very ironical that today international organizations are coming to organize hand washing programs in India. So it shows how disconnected we are from our shastras.
Yes, absolutely. But I do have a question which I was asking you earlier. Now, if we knew so much about hygiene and sanitation, why did we have open defecation?
So the thing is, they understood open defecation very differently. The ancient Indians knew the dangers of defecating very close to the habitation,
Right.
and they knew that where we live is where we eat our food, where we breathe the air. So they knew that they need to go very far away from habitation. So they knew that fecal matter can contaminate food and water. As I mentioned to you, it's given in the text. So they went as far away as they could from their houses to empty their bowels. They carried a little bit of water with them in a container, and after defecation they covered the pieces with sand so that no insects would spread disease. And then they used the left hand for anal washing, and then they cleaned this hand thoroughly. But to be doubly sure, they never used that hand for eating. They always made sure they used the right hand for eating.
Yes.
So the thing is that in ancient India, it was possible for rural people to go to far off places. They were able to find isolated places away from habitation, which were also away from water sources. And after defecation, the waste would be absorbed into the soil and the nutrients would be returned to the soil, and it would not pollute water or land. No manual scavenging was needed. So
Right.
that was a very good practice at that time, open defecation in ancient India. Then, as populations exploded, it became harder to find sequestrated places far away from habitation. It reached a point when there was no far away, because even if you went far away, you were close to the next village. So you would be harming those people if you defecated in the open. So the practice of defecating outdoors began to increase the risk of spreading disease. So we must understand that open defecation cannot be sustained beyond a certain density of population. So at that time, the density of population was fine in ancient times, and
Yes.
then came a time when it was not okay. Even just 5 decades ago, population densities were not so high, and open defecation was probably not increasing the risk of disease like it is today.
Right.
So it's an erroneous assumption to say that some people think that India's open defecation problem is rooted in a lack of knowledge of hygiene, and that comes from our ancient Hindu texts. So I want to make a point about that. This is so wrong. There was an article in New York Times by someone called Gardiner Harris, and he made the insinuation that only Hindus are indulging in open defecation because it's mentioned in their texts that they should do so. This is a terrible misrepresentation, because it ignores the fact that open defecation was meant to keep the waste completely separate from the living areas, and it made total sense to do that. Today, the whole problem of the squalor in the cities, it comes because we are distanced from our Vedic principles of hygiene, disease prevention, and environmental protection.
Please remember to subscribe to us and switch on the notifications for this channel. For our other social media links, more content, and to support our work, please visit citti.net. Dhanyavad. Namaskar.